Today we're going to be learning about proofs. There's an example up here to show you. So, the first thing we do in this example is we go to the given. So, we go to our diagram and start marking off the givens. So, our first one is segment BC is congruent to segment DA. And we use our congruent markings to show that they're congruent. Go to our next given. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Again with our angle congruent markings. And last one, segment CF is congruent to segment AF. After we are done with our givens, we look at what we're trying to prove. So we're trying to prove that triangle CEF, which is right here, is congruent to triangle AEF. So we know that E is a vertical angle, but you can't say in our proof that it's a vertical angle because it is intersecting these two triangles. Even though it's intersecting, you still have to say that's congruent to itself. So you put our congruent markings. So we know that we're trying to prove that triangle CEF is congruent to triangle AEF. We know that these two sides are congruent, and we are trying to prove that these two sides are congruent. So we're trying to prove that segment CE and AE are congruent. And by doing that, we need to prove that this triangle right here and this one over here are congruent to each other. And we prove that with the AAS postulate. So after we prove that these two triangles are congruent, we know that we have to prove these two triangles with the SSS postulate. So now we can start our proof after we already planned out what postulates and theorems we're going to use. So the first thing we use is the given, which is segment BC is congruent to segment DA. And the reason is because it's our given. Normally we don't use our second given right away, but because we need it in this case, we have to. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason is because it's our given. So we already know that angle E is congruent to itself, so we have to put it in our proof as number 3. But since angle E isn't available to put in our proof, we have to use angle BEC and angle DEA. And the reason is because E is a vertical angle. So now that we proved that angle BEC and DEA are congruent to each other, we know that they're both triangles. So as number 4 in our proof, we have to put triangle BEC is congruent to triangle DEA. And the reason, as we said it before, is because of the AAS postulate. So now that we are done proving that these two triangles are congruent, we know that segment EA is congruent to segment EC. So we move on to our next given, to our third and final given, which is segment CF is congruent to segment AF. And the reason is because it's our given. So because we are trying to prove that these two triangles are congruent, we know that segment EF is congruent to itself. So because of the reflexive property, we are allowed to say that segment EF is congruent to segment EF. And since we know that segment CE is also congruent to itself, we are allowed, because of CPCTC, we are allowed to say that segment CE is congruent to segment CE. Now, so we have proved that segment AE and EC are congruent, segment CF and AF are congruent, and segment EF is congruent to itself. So now we have proved that triangle CEF is congruent to AEF. So at the end we have to write triangle CEF is congruent to triangle AEF. And our reason is because of what we said before. The SSS postulate that is how you prove, that's how you write a proof using this.